All right, everybody, let's get our quarterly study hall started here. I want to thank you all for joining us and thank you for being part of the league and always being supportive of the league, and as well as for your work done locally. So it's always a very important part of any community, the work that city clerks do. And so you probably don't get a lot of pat on the backs throughout the year, but definitely want to give you credit for everything that you do. And keep your head up. I know this is kind of a tough time of the calendar as we enter budget season, at least for most cities, and very stressful part of the year because of that. And then on our personal lives, we got a lot of pressure to do the holidays and find gifts and meet with family and all that. So totally understand if you're feeling a lot of stress out there, and more stress to come, but everyone here at the league supports you. And so there's any time you need help with anything, city budgeting or really anything under the sun, that's what we're here to do. So always be aware that the league wants to help you and supports you locally. Today's study hall is going to be more of an open Q&A. The first few, I should say, we've had a bit more of a planned out kind of structure to the hour. With this one though, we were asked to just do an open one as much as possible so anyone can just fire their questions away. And so we have a good 58 minutes left here. And I do have some questions to go through that were submitted when some of you signed up for this study hall. So we'll do those. I think we have about a half dozen or so that we're kind of pre-filed. But as we go, use the chat if you like. I'll keep my eye on that. Use the Q&A option as well. I'll keep my eye on that at the same time. And I'll get to those throughout our time together this morning. And I'm also going to share my screen because a few things that were asked ahead of time. I'm going to show you some resources on our website, just in case anyone on the meeting today is not aware of them. I always want to stress that we have a lot of stuff out there available to our members. And a lot of it's online and free to access. So hopefully you can see a web page or the Legal Cities website. And I'm going to zip around quickly because I'm familiar with it. Some of you may not be, but I will just kind of again start off by showing a few resources, and so everyone's aware of those. The one I'm going to start with is something called the City Clerk / Finance Officers Handbook. And hold on here. I got a question about a link to today's meeting. Just real quick. Let me get that started. Okay, make sure everybody gets in here that wants to join today's webinar. I'm going to get back to my website here, and I want to show you the new edition of the City Clerk / Finance Officer Handbook. So we got this released, I think it was in October, I want to say. This is a manual that's been produced by the league for many years, and had a lot of helpers over the years as well. Thinking back to like Cindy Kendall, she was really in charge of this thing for a couple different editions at least. And prior to Cindy, there were some other folks that helped put this together. Folks at Iowa State Extension. Paul Coates is a name that some of you may remember from way back when. So again, there's been a lot of folks who have helped with this, to have an expert knowledge on city government in general, but in particular with the work that city clerks and finance officers do. So if you're not familiar with this manual or handbook, I should say, I would definitely check it out. Again, it's freely available to anyone on our website. You can download it, you can print it. The PDF version, of course, makes it searchable. We also hyperlink things so you can kind of zip around to different chapters quickly. And there's hyperlinks within those chapters to take you out to different state government pages, different resources that are available to you. And so I always just share that, especially now that we have a new edition available. We try to do this every couple of years. A lot of the guidance in the handbook does not change greatly. Some of this is pretty timeless, but on the other hand, there are some things that do have to get changed every couple of years because state codes change. We've all seen what's happened in property taxes. You've been around now for a couple, 3 years. You probably understand there's been a lot of change to the property tax system via the state legislature. And so those pages and that guidance has to get updated. Every now and then there's changes to open meetings laws, open records laws, and some other things too. So we do take a look at it every couple of years. But again, a lot of the guidance embedded is pretty timeless. And so if you have a previous edition in your city hall somewhere, I'm sure it's still in good shape. But again, this is now freely available on our website. And so I would encourage everybody out there, veteran city clerks and finance officers along, especially you new folks, make sure you take a look at that. And it's just I use it all the time, and it's still just one of those great resources for everybody out there in city government. One thing I wanted to get into our questions that were pre-filed is there were several different comments about sort of being new to the job and looking, or first of all, feeling lost, which I totally sympathize with you. Anyone who starts out in city government, I think, has that feeling of being lost and kind of not understanding where to look even on getting help. In our smaller communities, this is even more of an issue because you don't have perhaps a co-worker in City Hall that you can lean on for a bunch of guidance and veteran experience. And so in some cases, you're kind of on an island. So I wanted to, just before I get into some of the guidance we offer for new folks, just talked about that city clerk and finance officer handbook, another resource that the league provides. And this is under our resources area on our website. And if you look at different sections here on the resources, administration is a main one for us, so especially for city clerks. This is a big area that has a whole bunch of different pages. They provide guidance on different topics. I mean, open meetings, open records is a big one, of course. A lot of things that go into open meetings, like council meeting procedures, doing the minutes, how votes are done, public hearings, public notices, so a lot of stuff. But one area I wanted to click on here related to new folks is the city clerk resources section. And there's a lot of different stuff in here. Again, if you're not familiar, make sure you visit these pages. A lot of these are designed for city clerks, especially newer city clerks. One of those is the Clerk Mentor Program. And we have a lot of wonderful veteran city clerks out there that have signed up to participate in this program and offer help primarily for those newer clerks and finance officers. Because again, when you start in that role, there's not a lot of previous education or other experience outside of city government that really is applicable to being a city clerk or a city administrator or a finance officer. There's some, but you can take some classes, but a lot of it is just learning on the job and then doing training with the league and with Iowa State Extension and with IMFOA. That's really how you get educated on and for your role at city government. And so the mentor program is related to all this in that you've got veterans out there who are willing to provide direct assistance and guidance to those newer folks. In some cases, if they have time, there's always a time crunch in city government, but if they have time, they may even be able to visit you at your city hall and kind of hover you, so to speak, and walk you through different parts of the job, whether that be accounting, payroll, accounts payable. A lot of it's financial related, but other parts of the job too, doing the minutes for a meeting, a council meeting, helping prepare the council meeting packet, everything that goes into that, the agenda, proposed resolutions and ordinances, public hearing notices, all sorts of different things that can crop up in any city and any city clerk or finance officer or city administrator for that matter. So I just want to make sure that people are aware of that resource because these are excellent folks who know city government as well as anyone out there. And so utilize them. And our job at the league is to help make those connections. So if you are needing contact or to make a connection with a mentor, we can share those names in your region. We kind of break these, as you can see here on this map, we try to break everything up into different regions as much as possible. Some regions have great representations with mentors. Other regions, it's a little thin. So we always try our best, given the circumstances. But again, just make sure you're aware of that and utilize these different resources throughout the year. Now, getting to the questions in particular, we had one that talked about being a month and a half on the job and feeling lost. So again, just kind of spoke to some different resources to help get you started. I would also just say the entirety of our website is available to you all. So just always be aware. We've done a lot of these pages again with kind of a particular um, focus on city clerks because for most cities, the city clerk is the hub, if you will. They're expected to know everything. And again, a lot of cities are short-staffed, just maybe a handful of people that work for the city, and the city clerk's kind of the main hub of everything again. Um, so that's the first place I'd start is just making sure you're aware of those resources, pair up with a mentor, utilize the league, ask us questions, and then taking the training. I can't stress how important it is if you're new to this world of being a city clerk that you get connected in IMFOA, for example. If you're not familiar with them, that's another website. Hopefully you can see this. If you're not seeing my web pages, just use the chat and let me know. But IMFOA is the Iowa Municipal Finance Officers Association. They host 2 conferences per year. They also provide a lot of other membership benefits to offer guidance and training. And so definitely get familiar with that group if you're not already, and consider membership if you're not already a member. They're just a wonderful professional association for city clerks and finance officers. So again, if you're brand new, I would definitely get connected with them. Some other things, if you're new to office or new to the city clerk world that come to mind would be, again, going kind of back to IMFOA, a lot of those, a lot of folks around the state have regional meetings. There's regional city clerk groups that cover the entire state. And so we can help you make connections with that as well. A lot of them meet either monthly or quarterly, kind of depends on the group. But those can just be great networking opportunities and meet folks that you can lean on for assistance as well. So hopefully the council supports you and supports training, because there is a cost to these things, whether it's IMFOA or the league or others out there, Iowa State Extension. There is a cost to that, and so your city is going to have to pay for that. But I think most cities have this as just kind of a staple of the city budget, that staff get training, again, particularly with city clerks, because that job does require a lot of technical knowledge. And so you do hopefully have that support that you can be sent off to the different trainings, because that's really the best way to slowly but surely understand your role and all the different technical things that go into the job. Let's see, we had a few other here. There was one of the same deals, feeling lost. So again, hopefully those first couple questions we received ahead of the webinar here, speaking to being new and feeling lost. Hopefully I've answered some of that with the resources I shared, and also the networking opportunities that you have to utilize those. And again, league staff, part of our job here is to help make those connections for you. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Moving on to city budgets, we had a handful of questions, or a couple of questions anyways, related to city budgeting, which makes sense. We are now fully immersed in city budget season. For most cities, if you're a city that's, especially on the smaller side, you may not have to start as soon as some of the larger cities. The really big cities, in fact, a lot of them, they get started in like October, maybe even September. A lot of times they'll kick it off with like a goal setting or strategic planning session with the council, as that kind of feeds into the budget, because when you're talking about goals and priorities of the city or doing capital improvement planning, a lot of those have a budgetary impact, of course. And so that kind of, you do that work early on, that feeds into the budget season. In our smaller cities, there's not quite as much to go through. And so you don't have to start quite as soon if you don't need to as a city. But again, like heading into December here now, this is really now budget season. So don't panic if your city hasn't really fully started, your council hasn't held work sessions or stuff like that. But if you haven't started, I would definitely, you're new to this whole game, I would definitely start to pivot into budget season here very soon here. So that's one just kind of overall thought I have for the questions that we got related to budgeting. It's also why the league holds our budget workshops in November and December. We just have one more tomorrow, which is the virtual budget workshop. We had a few in November and one yesterday in West Des Moines. But that's why we hold them in this time of the year, because again, this is kind of kickoff to city budget season. There are a bunch of rules that go into city budgeting. So we had a question from Allerton on just kind of what are the budget rules and amendments. We probably not enough time today to go through everything, because city budgeting is really complicated from both the perspective of a lot of local decisions need to be made as you compile your budget, and then ultimately have the council approve it. But there's also a lot of legal steps to actually approve the city budget. There's 2 public hearings you must hold. So a couple, again, this is another kind of trigger for me to show you some resources that will be very helpful to you if you haven't already accessed them. One is going back to our publications section here. And again, make sure everyone can see me. If you guys don't mind in the chat, just say yes if you can see my website or see my screen that I'm showing the league website. I just want to make sure that that is the case. Okay, good. And so one thing I'm going to show you to answer this question more directly is a couple different resources, starting with our budget special report. So this is a report that we always utilize or put out every November. That's kind of the goal. Put this out in November. It runs through a whole bunch of different things, revenues that are important to city budgeting, property taxes being a big part of that. A whole bunch of other things, and then we move over to expenditure side of things, look at some of those things in the budget special report, recent legislation that impacts city budgets, and then other budget issues. And actually I need to scroll back here. And so this gets to the technical side. So this probably answers the question more directly that we received from Allerton on like, what are the rules that go into city budgeting? Well, take a look at this section in particular, because it does walk you through the things you have to do, starting with the annual financial report, which was actually due here just yesterday or Monday. It's December 1st, but if December 1st falls on a Sunday, it's the following day. And so that is kind of the kickoff, because you really need to have your AFR done in order to then do the city budget, the annual budget. And so if you're a city, if you're brand new to this, you're kind of like, what is the AFR? Don't panic. But you do need to talk to Ted Nellison at the Iowa Department of Management, because he is the one person at the Department of Management when you submit your city budget, the annual budget form in the springtime. It's due by April 30th. That's who you're submitting it to. But he also helps do the AFR submittal as well. And so definitely talk to him if you feel like your city has not done this yet. This is all foreign to you. But hopefully every city out there has completed an AFR because of that December 1 deadline. But that is a key part to this, because you got to get that submitted in order then to move on to the next step, which is the city budget. And so that's, again, where we're in the middle, or we're starting off the budget season right now. So you got to get that AFR done. Then it leads into the rest of this work. And I'll kind of skip ahead in our budget special report to show you what we have for guidance. So this budget calendar section is going to be really key to follow, because there are a lot of steps to it. It's messier than it probably should be, but that's what we got. So there are some statutory requirements under the State Code of Iowa that you must follow as a city to properly complete the city budget. So follow that section. There's also a calendar in here that gives you a kind of a template calendar. It may not be perfect for your city. This calendar is based on a city government that has a council that meets twice per month. I know a lot of cities meet only once per month, but you're probably going to have to add in some special meetings if you're one of those cities that meets only once per month, because of this condensed calendar. And what I always tell cities is you got to start from the deadline, which is April 30th. You must submit your full annual budget to Ted at the Department of Management by April 30th. That's the statutory deadline. But within that schedule, as you can see on this kind of template calendar, the state code requires you to hold 2 public hearings on different parts of the budget. The first one is related to your proposed property taxes. Okay. So that's the first part. And you must do a public hearing notice ahead of that, and so on and so forth. And there's, again, a lot of statutory requirements there that the public hearing notice must be published in cities over 200 population, must be published in a newspaper at least 10, but no more than 20 days prior to that meeting where the hearing will be held. And that particular meeting for your proposed property tax statement has to be a separate meeting, and that can be the only item of business, only item on the agenda for that particular meeting. Then there's a second hearing later on in the process that is just for the annual budget, the full annual budget, the traditional hearing and approval for the annual budget. And that budget must be approved by resolution. So because of those statutory requirements, it's actually a very condensed time frame, because you actually really, given, as you can see on the screen there with this calendar, you and your council really need to be done with all the sort of working things out, making tough decisions like any budget process requires. But it really needs to be done in February, given these statutory requirements of public hearings and notices. Part of this is also now you must submit a statement, a form that Department of Management provides. You got to submit that to the county by March 5th. And so, again, you got to have a lot of this done and settled, your council does, in February. And so you can meet your requirements here under the state code. I'm gonna do a quick sidebar question here, because Ginger sent a question that's related to this. With the shortened time frame cities must have on the tax levy amounts to the county auditor, will the state be changing when the counties must have property valuations to the cities? Keeping it as December 31st gives the cities a very, very short turnaround. So thank you, Ginger, for kind of working me back to another big part, a big element to this whole budget season. I'm going to leave this budget special report up here for a second and highlight this first thing. It says city elected officials and staff members meet to hold preliminary budget discussions and schedule formal work sessions and budget adoption dates, November, December. So this is kind of the preliminary stuff. What most cities do at this time of year is look at last year's budget, or I should say the current fiscal year's budget, FY25, and say, okay, how are we doing? Are we way off on our revenues? Are we looking good there? What about expenditures? Are we way up in one part of the budget, way down, blah, 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 blah. And it's still only about halfway through the fiscal year. So you don't have the full picture yet by any means, but you can kind of say, okay, we're tracking really well in this spot, but we're really off in this spot. We might have to make some adjustments. Then the other thing is the property valuations. So if you have attended any of our budget workshops, you always hear me stress this in one of our presentations, which is everything is built on property valuations when you think about property taxes. And property taxes are a huge component to your city budget and the revenue side of the equation. And so property valuations by law must be delivered from the county to the cities by December 31st. To Ginger's point, I would hope, I would love, in fact, to see that deadline get moved up. I haven't heard of any talk that would happen. I'm sure county auditors out there would say that's, we're under the gun too, and we need every minute we can to get all of our valuation work completed. And then they send out these valuation reports to all the taxing authorities, including city governments. I think most counties do a good job with the current deadline of December 31st, but there's always a few who miss that, and that really causes a pain point for cities who are trying to, progress through the budget process and really start to fine tune things. And it's really hard to do that until you have your property valuations, because on that report you'll get from the county, it'll show your assessed valuations across the city along with your taxable valuations, and you really can't make firm decisions until you have that valuation report. You can do you can do preliminary work right now, take last year's budget, kind of use that as a framework for the next year's budget. But until you get your valuations, it's hard to make those really specific decisions that you're going to have to make, and you and your council are going to have to make. So I don't have any great answers for you, Ginger, or others who are concerned about this, because it does force you into a very, very tight time frame in your council, and waiting for those valuations, and then making those really tight decisions, or typically tight budgetary decisions for most cities out there. So I sympathize with you, but until we get a law change on that deadline for property valuations for the counties, that's what we got. So at any rate, then moving through the process, you get those valuations hopefully in late December, and you're not waiting around forever. Then you can move in January into the council. Typically, most cities have at least one work session where the council really starts. They can't vote. You're not really voting on anything formally, but you can help kind of shape the budget. And then as you head into February, that's when you start really doing, okay, we're done with the property taxes. We've really got this budget pretty much solved. Yeah, we know we're good. And then in March, as you can see on the screen there, you've got your statutory requirements to submit your property tax statement to the counties. The counties then send out that statement to all the property owners around the county, including those within city limits, by March 20th. And then you can move on to the formal procedures with holding the 2 public hearings before you finally, at the end of April, get that budget submitted to Ted Nellison at the Department of Management. And so there's a lot that goes into it. And within this short hour we've got this morning, probably can't go into all the details, but just be aware of this resource, the Budget Special Report. And then, sorry, I'm going to try to click back out of here and go to another section of our website. This is going back to our resources area. And sorry, let me get this moved. And then we've got a whole area on finance. This section of our website will talk even more about approving and amending the budget process, different ideas, different tips for doing budgeting in general, but also specific areas of your budget with, for example, fire departments, the library. And there's also a whole bunch of pages on accounting, which is not necessarily related to the city budget processes, but more about counting, which happens throughout the year. And cities have to account for things under a system called fund accounting. So again, if you're brand new to this, this is a particular area where I've heard tons of people over the years talk about how I used to work for a bank. I used to do accounting in the private sector, but this is I jumped over to city government, and fund accounting is completely foreign and different than anything I've ever seen. I totally get that. And so there's a lot of training, a lot of education that goes into this. So there's a lot of resources on our website, but this is another one where I'd say definitely talk to a mentor. And then another resource that we have is a woman named Teresa Rocheffer, who is a consultant with the league. She retired from city government work. She was a longtime finance director and city administrator for some different cities, but is now with us as a consultant. And she has been helping a lot of cities in a more hands-on role where any number of ways she can provide assistance, but primarily in the area of city budgeting and finance and accounting. That's really where Teresa excels. And so we've had a lot of cities utilize her services over the past about year now that she's been doing this work with us. So if that's a particular area of need for you or your city, I would definitely reach out to Teresa. And again, that's a contact that we can share with you. So again, check out some different pages in here. There's a lot of stuff on city finance. It's a huge topic area for city government folks. And so just again, be aware of this in your work. I'm going to get back to a few other questions we had. We had one from the city of Conesville that talked about updating ordinances and printing. So this is a good question. I'm going to go back to our administration area. I'm going to talk about this in a couple different ways. And I'm going to talk about minutes. That's one area. I know we've got some guidance on this. It talks about your general requirements as a city government to publish minutes if you're a city over 200 population. If you're in a city less than 200 population, you just have to post your notices, post your agendas, and post your minutes in 3 places, public places around town. Most cities are over 200 population and are going to publish their minutes within 15 days. You have to send it to the newspaper within 15 days of any meeting. Okay. And so there's some general requirements there. And this page will kind of take you through all that. This is all from the State Code of Iowa. There is also a requirement to publish your ordinances or a summary of your ordinances. Again, if you're a city over 200 population, and there's also a little quirk in the law. I'm going to show you this here in a second. Public notices page. We summarize some of the guidance related to that. And some of this has changed, so I got to be careful not to lose you all. But I'm going to focus on ordinances first, because again, there's a quirk in the law there where a couple different things. First of all, you have to, if your council approves an ordinance or amendment to an ordinance, the state code says you must publish that ordinance for it to go into effect. Or you can do a summary, which pretty much every city does a summary because ordinances can be quite lengthy. And a summary is going to save you some space and save you some cost on that publication. So you can do that. The summary just has to kind of summarize things, have the title of the ordinance, when it was passed by the council, when it goes into effect, and then a quick synopsis of what that ordinance does or the amendment to the ordinance is doing. Then you're good to go. There's also a quirk though that says for cities that are less than 200, again, you don't have to publish, or for cities that do not have a newspaper published in town, they don't have to publish their ordinances or their summaries of their ordinances. They can post those. It's just a little quirk just for ordinances for cities that do not have a newspaper published in town. So that's how all of that works. Now, another part to this question is if you're updating a city code book, okay, that's a different matter. This is it's called codification. And I think we have a page on this as well on our website that I'm going to show you right here. Again, I'm in the administration section within our resources area of our website. So here's what that looks like. This is codification. The state code gives you basically 3 different options to codify all of your ordinances in a city code book, okay? One choice is what most cities do, and that is just they update the city code book as they go. So anytime a new ordinance is adopted, or an amendment is adopted, or a repeal of an existing ordinance / city code, because ordinances are basically city codes, they just update the city code book on the spot. It's basically an electronic file that the city maintains. And some cities, like especially the larger ones, actually have a service where they have an online code book and it can be updated, anytime the city feels it needs to. And so that's one way of doing it. It's just you update the code book as you go, as new ordinances and amendments are passed by the council. Then there's another commonly used option, which is kind of like the annual supplement. So once per year, essentially, a city will look at all the ordinances that were adopted in the previous year, which for smaller towns might just be a couple ordinances or amendments to ordinances that the council approves. And so that might be a better option in those cities where it's just once per year, we'll take a look back and say, okay, it's time to update the code book. And here's what we're doing. That's kind of an annual supplement. And then the other option is, this is probably for even smaller towns where you have to update your city code book at least once every 5 years. So again, this might be cities where it's rare for the council to amend existing codes or adopt new codes. And so there's not a great need to continually be updating the city code book, but at minimum, according to state code, you must update your city code book at least once every 5 years. And so this is kind of called recodification. You take the entire code book, you look back over 5 years and say, okay, here's all the changes that have been made via ordinance approvals or amendments by the council. And so those are the 3 different ways that the state code says you can update your code book, but your city code book, but that's what you have to do as a city government. Let's see here. We have one more before I can take questions live and on the spot. So again, if any questions that are coming to your mind, I've got one ready to go in the Q&A from Terry. We'll get to that next. So anyone on the meeting right now, please just use that Q&A or the webinar chat. I'll keep my eye on both, but we're getting close to needing some questions to fill the air, so to speak. So don't be shy whatsoever. All right, so the last one we had is resident requests, and this is from the city of Mobile. And if Mobile is on, you can fill in some more details on what exactly you're after. But I can probably imagine what you're thinking of, and I'll shape my answer in 2 different ways, because resident requests can kind of be in my mind, it can break into 2 different categories, and that's where they're requesting the city to do something in particular. Or when they're complaining about something and they're kind of requesting the city to go do something about this problem in town. So they're kind of requests in general, but it kind of, again, they can be broken into categories based on the nature of the request or nature of the comment or complaint. So generally speaking, what I tell cities is, first and foremost, especially for your council members out there, this is a very important guidance thing that we offer to them when we do our training, especially the municipal leadership academies, which are designed for newly elected officials, mayors, and council members. And that is that they have to be very, very careful to understand, very, very careful first to not make promises that they or the city cannot keep. Okay. Because especially elected officials, but you as city clerks, you probably feel the same public pressure. You're out, people can come into city hall, you're out around town. They'll say, hey, why don't you look into this? Or why don't you do something about that? And the best answer that all of you, whether it's the mayor, the council, you as city clerks, the best answer anyone can provide is thank you for your comment. Thank you for your concern. We will look into that. I will take this to the council, or I'll take it back to City Hall, and we will look into it. And that should just be your straight answer across the board. Because a lot of times people will ask you to do something that really may not even be a city government matter. It may not be within the city government's purview whatsoever, but it also might be something that you cannot do for some legal reason, or you don't have a budgetary capacity to help fund the thing they're asking for. You may not have staff time anytime soon to deal with the issue that they're bringing up. It may be something that your council's already discussed, and it's low on the priority list for the city because the city council's done strategic planning or goal setting. They said, we've got higher priorities for the next year or the next 2 years, and we're not going to deal with this thing that you're asking about anytime soon. And so those are the types of things that you got to be aware of as a city clerk before you make any commitments on behalf of your city. But again, staying with your mayor and council, and that's something that you may have to, as a city clerk, tell them like, hey, don't make any promises. Someone's going to request the city to do something. We cannot commit to anything on the spot. Everything has to be approved by the city council. So again, never make commitments that you really are certain that the council will support. Tell folks, yep, we'll look into it and we'll get back to you. That's the best answer. And so just generally speaking, that's what I always tell folks. Now, if it's a more of a complaint on side of things, this is where, again, you can divvy it up into different things. The first thing I'd say, if it's more of a complaint-based request, is to first see, is this something that this is really relevant to the city government itself? The traditional example I give is, two neighbors live next door to each other. They're complaining over tree debris. And what in this example we always talk about is it's a tree that's on private property. And the classic example is it's a big old oak tree or maybe a sycamore that has a lot of tree debris each year, and maybe some limbs are falling, what have you. And the tree is clearly in one person's yard, but it's the limbs and the debris is falling into somebody else's yard. These two neighbors are fighting over that. That has nothing to do with city government. But a lot of times they'll come to the city and say, help resolve this issue. This guy, won't clean up the tree debris. It's not my fault, blah, blah, blah. Hear it all. But if it's clearly a private property owner dispute, you say, hey, I understand that's a big deal to you too, but you got to figure it out. This has nothing to do with city government. We're not going to get involved. That's the best way to handle that type of issue. There's probably other examples out there that you can think of. So that's the first thing I say is this something that's within our purview as a city government? If not, you say, thank you, but we wish you well, and leave it at that. Now, if it is something that has to do with the city, then you're going to have to at least, again, going back to the previous guidance, say, okay, we will look into it. And then you got to really start to discern, okay, is this like an emergency? Is this a criminal complaint that really needs to go to law enforcement? Okay, then you just kick it to law enforcement. For cities that have a police department, of course, you contact them. If you do not have a police department, you contact your law enforcement provider, which for most cities then would be the county sheriff's department. And so if someone, should have called 911 or should have filed a report with law enforcement, sometimes they might just call City Hall because they don't know where else to turn. Okay, fine. And then you just got to push them on to law enforcement. So that's for criminal type things. If someone's alleging a crime or is worried about their safety, stuff like that, okay, go to law enforcement. Now, if it's more of a civil thing related to municipal codes, like nuisance property issues, there's glass on a sidewalk, broken glass. Someone hasn't cleared the snow from their sidewalk. Those types of just everyday sort of complaints that can come in any given city out there. Okay, yep, thank you we'll look into this, we'll deal with this. And then we'll move on and start utilizing our powers as a city government to get that neighbor to clear the snow, or to clean up the sidewalk, whatever the issue may be. And so that's how I would handle those, just again from a broad perspective, when it comes to citizen requests, complaints, comments, issues, and so on. On all of this point, some cities have a formal process for complaints to be filed or comments to be filed, like a complaint form or a comment form. Some cities require citizens to use forms like that and submit them through some sort of portal online or a city hall. Not many cities do that. They'll just take, any complaint that comes in via phone calls or emails or anything like that. That's fine. It's totally up to you as a city government, whether you want to make it very formal or not. There's different schools of thought on that. I don't really have a strong feeling on it either way. But if you do have a formal process, just make sure everyone follows it properly. Also related to this is some council members and mayors are very this very like aggressive. I guess I don't know, it's not the best word, but this whole part of city government is very important to them. That anytime a citizen makes a comment, a complaint, a request, that they want to know immediately what the request is, the complaint, and I think it comes from a good place. They want to show that they care, right? That I'm an elected person. I want to be responsive to the public. So it comes from a good place, but sometimes you have to tell them, listen, we have a process to this, and we can give you all the content that we get, but just let the process play out. So sometimes you have to tell them, especially if it's like something that's, criminal in nature for sure, you're gonna have to tell them, listen, this is a law enforcement investigation. You gotta, mind the process for that. But other types, it might be sensitive and you have to say, we're working on it, and we'll inform you, or the city attorney will inform you what's going on. And you just kind of defer to the attorney in certain situations like that. So again, there's all kinds of different angles that come in when you talk about resident requests or complaints and all that good stuff. Okay, we have one question in Q&A to get to. And again, folks, if you have any on your minds, we have about 16 minutes left. And I want to make sure that we get to anything that you are thinking of. So Terry, good to see you, or virtually see you, Terry. Let's see here. It says, do I need a new TCC every year to file my employment taxes, W-2 or 1099? Or if I got one last year, am I able to use that same one again? Terry, if you don't mind, for the benefit of the group and myself, this is an area I don't have a ton of knowledge in, payroll taxes and filings and so forth. First of all, what does TCC mean? And then secondly, for the whole group, if anyone has the answer to this while I'm buying time here with Terry, please go ahead and fill us all in. Use the chat, use the Q&A. If no one is aware, I'm happy to look this up, but I'm not exactly sure what TCC refers to. So again, Terry, if you don't mind adding to that somewhere, either the chat or Q&A, or the group can help you out further. In the meantime, if anyone else has any questions, now is your chance. Feel free. Anyone at all? Any questions? I know you've got some. Okay, Samantha, thank you. How do you know whether something needs to be a resolution or an ordinance? Probably a silly question, but I'm a newbie. No, Samantha, that is a very, very common question for anyone who's new to this. And that includes city managers, mayors and council members in particular. So do not feel like if there's any silly questions. Trust me, this stuff is foreign to pretty much everyone until you start working and serving in city government. So I am going to go back out to another page on our website where we have some guidance on this. This is again on our administration section, and then we go down to voting requirements and regulations. Excuse me. This will give you a brief overview of just all the different types of voting that occurs during a council meeting. So the three vehicles city councils can use are motions, resolutions, and ordinances. So as it says there, motions are really just for procedural things. Basically, you open a meeting and approve the agenda via a motion. Just a simple thing, procedural type thing, and then off you go. So minutes is a classic example there as well. A lot of cities do what is called a consent agenda, where you condense and combine a whole bunch of just routine approvals, such as claims, which are really bills, liquor licenses, cigarette permits, pet tags, building permits, all these things that are really kind of non-controversial. You're in most cases very confident the council will vote for them and approve them. You consolidate all of those into what is called the consent agenda. That's typically approved by a motion. So that's motions. Resolutions then are what are called policy statements. These are the policies of the city government. They're not laws of a permanent nature. They are just policies that have a short-term nature typically. So examples would be like an employment policy. You might have all sorts of employment policies, but those are not really permanent in the sense that they're permanent until you adjust them. But a lot of employment policies get adjusted throughout the year, but also procedural type policies, like the city requires 2 quotations for any time we're looking for a service contract, service provider of value. The contract has a value of more than $5,000. We must get 2 quotes. Anything more than $10,000, we must get sealed bids, 3 sealed bids, or something like that. Cities have different policies that govern those types of processes. So that's a financial policy. And so that would be approved by a resolution. The most common example would be your city budget. City budget has to be approved by a resolution. Why? State code requires it, but it's considered a resolution and it's considered a policy because that's the budget for the city government. It's not permanent. It's 1 year. It can be amended, but it's kind of a policy statement. This is how we're going to allocate our funds. This is how we're going to utilize the resources that we have available to provide all the services that our public demands via the budget. So that's a policy, and that's what you do with a resolution. Pretty much every contract that the city or agreement the city will be a part of each year, you approve that by a resolution as well. Now, moving to ordinances. Those are laws. Those are essentially the laws of your city government. So when you look at your city code book, all of that stuff was previously adopted by an ordinance. The one I usually look, there's plenty of examples, but look at your city nuisance code, for example. That is setting laws to say, okay, this is what a nuisance property violation will look at: overgrown grass, trash and debris in the yard after a certain length of time is considered a city code violation, and that's based on an ordinance that was adopted way back when. Parking, a lot of cities have parking codes that was adopted by ordinance to say, okay, you can park on these streets, but not these streets, or at these times, but not these times, and so on and so forth. And it's considered a law because if someone violates that, then you can prosecute them. You can cite them with a municipal infraction to say you violated a law of our city code book, and here's how we're going to go enforce it and pursue enforcement. And so that's the difference. Hopefully that answers your question, Samantha. Again, this stuff, you don't know it until you know it. So it's probably more complex than it needs to be in a lot of ways, but that's what we got. All right, more questions from anybody in the group here. Oh, got another one here. Oh, sorry. Okay, Terry. TCC, it's a number you get from the government to file the taxes electronically. Sorry, that's all I know. Okay. Ginger, it appears that you've got some knowledge here. So if you want to expand on that, please feel free. I was aware, generally speaking, that there were some changes. And I know you have to have a login for the state and federal governments for all of this fun stuff. And so again, if there's more veteran guidance to share, please do so now while we're at it. If not, I'm happy to look this up and or have one of the mentors or Teresa Rothschafer provide a more specific answer that I'm able to provide on the spot here. Let's see here. City of Allerton, thank you for your question regarding resolutions. Is there a specific name or number it must be named? We've been reviewing or receiving the verbiage from our city attorney. That's very common. And I wasn't sure where that number name came from. Okay, this is actually an interesting question. And cities do this a little bit differently. There's basically two methods for numbering your resolutions and your ordinances that I see. Some cities, it's just a straight sequential numbering system going back to the beginning of time, meaning at some point in time, 100, for many cities, 150 years ago, or maybe more in some places, they start with number one, ordinance number one. That's it. And now we're up to ordinance number 2,572. I don't know. Whatever the case may be, it's just a straight sequential numbering system. That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. That's probably not very common. The most common system I see is where you start with the year. So 2024, resolution number then would be 2024-1, -2, -3, -4, on and on throughout the year. So it always starts with the year, calendar year, and then it's just a sequential numbering from there. Same with ordinances, 2024-1, -72, whatever, however many resolutions or ordinances that the city council adopts each year. So it's the year and then sequential numbering. That's the numbering systems. So it's your choice. The state code does not dictate any kind of numbering system. But again, most cities usually do that. So it's pretty easy for anyone to follow when you just sequentially number them based on the year. And so that's that. And then the title is another one. It's purely your choice. The state code does not dive into this really at all. But I think another one's just kind of common sense that the title of the ordinance or title of the resolution is relative to what is being adopted. So a resolution to adopt the annual budget, there's usually some verbiage that says something to that effect for the FY 2020 fiscal year 2025 annual budget, blah, blah, blah. It's just something that summarizes what's being adopted. And then for amendments, especially with ordinances, because that's where you start to see more amendments, you'll say something amending ordinance number blank to do this, like a utility rate change to increase the utility, the water rate by 3% or something like that. And so in the ordinance title itself, it'll refer to what the amendment is actually doing. So again, so the public is aware, generally speaking, of what's being adopted by the council. So hopefully that helps you out. A lot of cities do rely on their city attorney to help with that stuff, which is totally fine and totally fair. Some cities, the clerk is expected to do all this work. And so you might have to look back at previous examples and try to kind of stick with what traditionally the city has used for both the numbering and the titling of all your different stuff. Hopefully that helps. Let's see here. We got on the chat here, a question or a comment. Let me try to look at this. From Megan, we have had the same one in QuickBooks for several years. I don't know if that is right or wrong, but I have not updated the IRS number. Is this reference to the TCC our conversation? Sorry, I'm just trying to get caught up here. And Ginger's added a few more thoughts here on the Q&A. She ended up using a third party last year. I asked the Department of Revenue at the IMF Way conference. This was the fall conference, I imagine, if they could get clear guidance and steps on behalf of us cities. And they said, no. Okay. So yeah, this has been an issue I'm aware of, again, kind of arm's length. Heard from a few folks. I don't have great guidance on this just yet. I mean, my main guidance would be like in the League of Cities can't pretend to be a city government and go request for your TCC number or any access through state and federal, logins for the stuff you have to do with filing your different things with them. So I can only help, we can only help you so much when it comes to this type of stuff. Because I know the state of Iowa has a whole vendor portal system that they require city governments to use. So the same with the Department of Revenue to do your filings. And so a lot of this, frankly, you're gonna have to like work with those agencies to the best of your ability to get guidance from them, help from them. And so I can only take you so far, but uh, this is definitely a point of where I'd say work with your mentors, your colleagues around you, uh, to see how they've handled this in the past. Again, I know they assign numbers and login credentials, especially at the state level. Um, so I wish I could be more helpful, but some of this is you're going to have to dig in and try to figure out what your city's login credentials are. It's not a great system. I totally sympathize with you there. Okay, yeah. So then Ginger made a comment here, and I'm gonna wrap it up. So we got 3 minutes to go. And so again, any last minute questions, just fire those off right now. But I know there's a GWorks fireside chat, and GWorks has been let's just say a topic of interest for many city officials, many city clerks here in the last month or so. And so if you're not aware of GWorks, don't worry about it. If you're not a GWorks client, don't worry about it. If you are a GWorks client, you probably want to get on that fireside chat that's being hosted here right after this, because that again has been a major source of frustration for cities that are with them for their and if you're completely oblivious, I'll just tell you, they are a partner league of cities. They provide a lot of different software options, including for financial software. So there's been a lot of issues with that. We're well aware of it. We have been communicating with them. I sincerely hope things do improve. If not, we'll have to think about that partnership. Our board will, that is, not necessarily league staff, but our board will going forward. And so to say just a kind of final sign off here, again, do not hesitate to ask us any questions at any time, anything we didn't get to today. Also, utilize these resources available to you online. Utilize that network out there with the Clerk mentors, Teresa, myself, any veterans around you. There's a lot of folks that want to help you. I've been around city government for many years. It's difficult, especially if you're new to this. I totally understand that you feel lost, but a lot of people want to help. I remember 20 odd years ago, whenever it was, and I got started, I asked too many questions. I felt like I was just bothering people every day, but that's the only way you learn. And so don't feel bashful. People do want to help you. That's one of the great things about our profession is that there's a lot of folks who are passionate about it and they want to help. And so with that, I'm going to close this session off. We will host a set of these again in 2025. We're thinking about doing some more Q&As. I think it's been a lot of value to city clerks out there. And so just keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll post information in League Weekly and on the email forums and all those places. So just stay tuned, and hopefully we'll see you soon. And if I don't talk to you soon, enjoy the holidays, and try to keep your head above water. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you all.